Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Art of the Possible podcast. This edition, I have a very special guest. I'm really super excited about this one. We've got Mr. Adrian Finglas, Olympic coach, junior coach, an astounding yachting coach. We've got him on board today. It's been a while to get him. He's a very tough man to pin down, but we're super excited. Adrian, how are you?
Yeah, really well, Rob. Going great amongst this corona lockdown and just controlling the controllables, Rob.
That's it. I mean, it's been distracting and pandemic, and I think I've never been in a health-led economy before. It's quite astounding, isn't it?
Yeah, at the moment I'm just working on my my health, trying to get out there every day, go for a walk, and eating well, and just trying to do the things that that you can do. That's all we can wish for.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think some of the things that you've learned as a coach, and we'll get into, but so many of those things I think are applicable to people who are going through something they haven't gone through before. Let's talk about sailing, because it's been a huge part of your life. Who got you into sailing? When was that? You're a Queensland boy. Who got you into the sport of sailing?
Yeah, Rob, sailing, as you know, it is my life, and there's not a day goes by that I don't live and breathe it. And I was this young lad in Queensland, family of four, and basically my mum and dad took me to my local yacht club for a junior program during the holidays, I think it was, and I was pushed out in the small creek that we had in Brisbane there, a place north of Brisbane called Sandgate, with my brother. And we struggled away, and I think I kicked my brother out of the little sabot, and the rest is history. I took over the helm, and I just fell in love with this great sport we've got. That
now you were a good swimmer as well. Were you looking when you started as the sports? Were you doing swimming and sailing at the same time? I mean, I know you did when you fall out of the boat, but were you doing that as a competitive thing?
Look, Rob, I started the sailing probably a lot earlier than some of my other sporting endeavours. Sailing was probably, the recollection is probably about 8 years old. But then I was like a lot of the typical Queensland kids of that era. You played every sport. You had to go at AFL, and you had to go at rugby league, and swimming's a big thing in Queensland. So, I spent a lot of time in my teenage years going up and down a pool. And then that led me also to a bit of a career in triathlon, which not a lot of people know about, but I've had an international career as a triathlete as well.
Well, I didn't know that. That's not surprised at all. But that's outstanding. And then you became very good. You won a Sabo Nationals, I think, if I'm right, which were really tough when you were racing the Sabos. A very, very big fleet back then.
Yeah, Rob. Look, sailing, I just started to get hooked at about 13, and I think that's a critical age, in most young people's development, no matter what the pastime. And I just fell in love with this sailing thing, and that took me on to competing at the national level. And I won a Sabo Nationals, and then I think along that journey, there's been, I think it's 10 nationals in maybe 7 different disciplines. So yeah, I've had a bit of a crazy career and a very diverse career in sailing.
Now, I remember you when you moved into the 420s. You're incredibly fast in the 420 class, which is a two-person boat, junior boat, for those of you who aren't sailors. When you moved, I'm interested to know what you went through as a young person, that dynamic when you go from that single-handed, sailing your own boat, and you move into a two-handed boat. Of course, you went on to do World Championships, won a couple of nationals, and there was this, I remember being at Victoria, and there was this, everybody in Victoria knew about this phenomenon, this Finglas bloke up in Queensland. It was outstanding. Yeah. But I want to go a little bit behind that. So what changes when you go from that single-handed to that double-hander, and you've got to go with somebody who wants to go to your career aspirations and all that? Take us through a bit of that journey.
Yeah, well, I think from a very early age, Rob, I was good at selling the dream. And I think I was about 15 or 16 when I got into the 420 class with a great young guy from my area called Kim Alexander. And we both had this shared passion in the early days of doing a lot of sailing and I probably ignited the passion for both of us to win. And I was hell bent on winning at that national level. And I think I just had a great ability from a young age to take people along that journey that I was really excited about. And Kim and I, from a very young age, we looked at it that we were athletes first and not sailors. And traditionally, our sport generally, you don't do a lot of training. And we took it to another level, and we started to train nearly every day of the week from a very young age. And I think back now to the 80s, mid 80s, when we were doing this, and we're just way ahead of our time. So when we raced, as you mentioned, local competition nationally, I think we were just 20 years ahead of the competition, because we trained as athletes. We didn't train as sailors, so to speak.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting, kind of changing the game up. And you moved into for coaching, and I think that was a really interesting thing. And what was the shift for you? When did you decide that that coaching appealed, or you'd like to coach? What was that transition?
Yeah, look, I sort of fell into it. I'd been in Europe in 1986 at a world championship in Belgium, and we were very successful. One of the first sort of Australian teams back then to do some travel and experience that European competition. And I got back from Europe, and I had a call from a man called Sid Corser in Perth, Western Australia. And Sid is an incredible man, very influential in the early sailing days with the youth in Western Australia. And Sid invited me over to Perth to come and do a youth coaching camp, basically. And it was unheard of. He paid for my flight, and wow. I bunked down with his family. And I always remember I opened the bedroom door, and I went into my room that I was housed for the few days, and here was an envelope with a beautiful card and a whole bunch of cash in it. And I was 17, I think it was 1987, and I'd never been paid for doing any coaching. And this wonderful man called Sid Corser gave me some money for my first coaching job. And I think that ignited the passion. I was here in another state in Australia, which back then was a big deal, and I was getting paid for something I loved. Yeah,
and so you got into it that way. When you started coaching, what did you enjoy about it?
I think, Rob, I'm this unusual character who's just geared to help people, and I don't know if it's come from that family upbringing, wonderful mother or great dad, but I think the family background of helping each other has always been instilled in us, the four children. And there's something there in me that I've just got to help people. And right. And maybe if I wasn't coaching, I possibly might be a teacher or something else, helping others. So, yeah.
So we've got an attribute. I think when you look at attributes of great coaches, clearly the first one is you want to help people. You genuinely want to do that from an intrinsic, internal part of you. What are other great things as you've gone on the coaching journey from there? What would you say are other attributes that make a great coach?
Yeah, Rob, I think listening's a really key thing. I think you need to be able to listen to the people who you're in touch with and find out what motivates them, find out where they want to go in the journey, and find out what their problems are each day. And once you've listened, then you can try to implement a bit of a plan. I've had the great opportunity to work alongside our head coach here in Australia, Victor Kovalenko, who they call the medal maker. And, Victor has very similar attributes at the top level. He nurtures his athletes. He listens a lot. And then he comes out with these one-line pearls of wisdom. But
Victorisms.
Yeah, the Victorisms. And, he's a great mentor for all of us, as was Mike Fletcher. But I think, listening's a really key attribute. I think the other thing with any mentor or coach, you've got to want the end outcome more than the athlete. And so I always would say to younger coaches, you need to want to win the nationals 110% if the athletes want to win it 100%. Wow. So, yeah, I think
that's really interesting, Adrian. I hadn't heard that before. Is that because that allows you to be kind of, you know, in the game as much as they are, but seeing more before, if you know what I mean? Is that where that comes from?
I think, Rob, in any pastime, if you want to be successful, my feeling is you got to be invested 120%, and every fiber, every piece of your being has got to be totally invested in that journey. And the sailing game for me has also put me in touch with a lot of super successful business people along the way, the likes of a Philip Kahn or a Lang Walker here in Australia. And one thing that I learned from being involved with these key business people, that they're invested in their businesses, their journey 120%, 24 hours a day. And I haven't seen any successful people, either sport or business, who aren't invested totally. There's no half measures.
No, I think that's right. And I think, look, there are a couple of great characters, and, you know, Lang Walker, you can look at his business career and his sailing career, and they really, to me, they operate very similar in terms of his approach. And look, Philip Kahn and the whole empire they've built in both sailing and also in the tech space has also been, I think they've approached it the same way. I think it's what you're saying. They've got the same view. When they do something, do it at 120%, or they don't do it at all.
Yeah, and you know, one of the other things I've learned along the way, all of those great people I've had the honour to be around, they're all really good with people. There's not too many successful people that I've come across who aren't good people. People persons?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. They're just they have an ability to capture people's imaginations and take them on the journey.
Yeah, and to motivate them along. So let's flip it around the other way then. What makes a great coachee? So someone you're asked to coach, and sometimes a parent might come to you and say, I want you to coach my kids, or it might be an Etchells team or a bigger boat team that come along and say, Adrian, we want you to coach the team. What are you looking for in that team, or that person, or that couple of people? What are you looking for to enable them, for you to go, they're a great coach? They're a great coachee.
Yeah, Rob, I think an inquisitive nature is really important. For you as a coach to get a message across, you want a student to be inquisitive and asking questions and trying to delve into the coach's psyche. And the worst thing you can be as an athlete or a coachee is just to be silent and not ask the coach any questions. So just ask a lot of questions and always ask the why. There's a lot of coaches out there who give a lot of directions,
right?
And I love the athlete to always question why. Okay, why do we need to train this many days, or why do we need to pull the control on that tight? And
right.
that gives the coach some more ideas on how to extend their learning.
Yeah, and their feedback, and to see, really gauge, I guess, where the athlete's up to. You know, we aligned or misaligned, or and I think that's a great point too. I think that a lot of coachees don't do that enough, both in business and in sport. They tend to sort of take the coach as the gospel or the God, you know.
Yeah,
and some coaches like that, by the way. But other ones, I think, you know, you need to, like you, who are a very collaborative coach. Wanting that feedback and wanting to know, because you're both actually learning on the journeys I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, look, I think the time you stop learning is it's time to shut the door. And you know, I look at our great John Bertram, who I'm lucky enough to see him quite regularly at my home club in Melbourne, Victoria. And John's, I think, 73 now, and he still sails the Etchell class at a high level. And John is, to this day, the most inquisitive athlete I've ever come across. You would think, he's won the America's Cup. He's won a bronze medal at the Olympic Games. He's 73, actual world champion, and he still asks questions. And,
He's outstanding,
I'm just,
I agree. Yeah.
It's outstanding. And I see myself as, I grew up in awe of a guy like John Bertram, and I'm just these days a coach at a club, and here he is asking questions all the time. And I think that's a really key thing as well in life. You got to keep sourcing that information.
Yeah, I love that, Adrian. And I have told you this, but many years ago I was at Sandringham Yacht Club, and my oldest boy, Ben, who you'd know, Ben was racing his Opties there at the time, and he's wearing all the Zyke gear. And John and Raza came down to the club, and John made a beeline over and said hello. We agreed that we knew each other. And he first liked great Rob, but he was really onto Ben, and he's thrown to Ben, and he was fascinated in Ben's new Zyke gear, and Zyke was a fairly new brand. And he was bringing Raza over, and he was asking Ben all these things about the hiking pads, because he was thinking about doing Finn Masters back then. And he's asking about the hiking pads and the new gear and and why it fitted. And Ben had absolutely no idea, because he was only about 9 at the time. But what I loved about it was that John, kind of bent down to Ben's level, because Ben was, not now, he's very tall now, but, and you spoke to him sailor to sailor. And I really loved that. And I just sort of stepped back and I watched the two of them have a dialogue. Because afterwards I said to Ben, that was fantastic. He goes, hey, he was a guy. So who was that guy? I'm like, well, that was John Birch. And of course he knew the name. But John calls out, he introduced himself as John. And I know from then he actually formed a partnership with Zyke and wore a lot of the gear. But just that inquisitive nature of seeing something, but being not too, even though, as you said Adrian, America's Cup winner, I mean, he's an iconic, not only as a yachtsman, he's an iconic sportsman in his country. But his ability is to, I'm really interested to learn. I'm learning. I don't care if it comes from a 9-year-old or it comes from a 90-year-old. I want to learn,
And Rob, I think that point you mentioned, get down to their level, or the athlete's level, or the employee's level. That's really key. And another person who's had a huge influence on my coaching career, and this is a bit left field, but an incredible football coach in Queensland. He's a bit of an icon, and that's a guy called Wayne Bennett, who was instrumental in the Broncos' successive premiership wins. And, I only went to 1 or 2 in the early days lectures with Wayne Bennett. Very humble man, doesn't say much. He's a hard taskmaster, but from what I understand, he gets down to the athlete's level if they have a problem or they've got a real issue. He's the type of coach who will listen and take those young men through their journey if they have any complications along the way. And he was very instrumental in some of the early days of what I practice and preach today.
And where did you get to see him, Adrian? Was when you say he was lecturing, where you saw him in action? Where was that?
Yeah, look, in the early days in Queensland, we had some really good coach catch-ups with the Queensland Institute of Sport. I was employed there for a number of years. And, we would have the ability to touch base with some of Queensland's best sporting coaches. So that was always a great thing. And when we did it in those very early days, it was not very formal. And so you would get to see these people face to face and learn a lot about their art of coaching.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about Wayne Bennett, because I've been a big fan of Wayne Bennett's, just his coaching style and the way he goes about his business has always been interesting. He's very sort of quiet. It's almost a quiet achiever, but just the way he does things is very methodical. I've always sensed. It was interesting. I've just finished a book by Anna Mears' new book. Adrian, of course, you know her from your Olympic work, and she also speaks about Wayne Bennett. It was just so funny when you brought it up, because she mentions, in fact, one of her toughest times before one Olympics, she actually went back to Wayne's quotes, and it was really interesting. But anyway, if you haven't read it, the latest book by Anna Mears, you definitely want to get it. But she actually mentions Wayne in there several times. So fascinating stuff.
Wow. Well, if you look at a guy like Wayne Bennett and then Victor Kovalenko, our head coach, for Australian Sailing Team, there's a lot of similarities there. And one of the key take-homes I see from both of those great men is they focus 100% on the basics and acquiring the basics and perfecting the basics. You know, I remember listening to Wayne Bennett a number of times and talking football, and he was just saying, you got to just run straight and go up the centre, and it's a basic concept. And with my sport, that has had a massive influence on how I deliver the sport and coach the sport.
Well, I've got to say, Adrian, there are a couple of things that really resonated with me. I remember you telling me once that I was asking you about sport when I was laser sailing, and you said to me, the quote was, 80% of world-class sailing was perfection of the basics. And I never forgot that. I thought that was just such a really interesting point. And then you went on to talk about the outlines of the 10,000 hour thing, and you went through, well, what are those basics? So it's 80% of perfection. What are those basics? Well, you're going to start. You're going to go around and mark. You're going to attack and you're going to dive. And you went through that, as you said. Well, you kind of know that. Everyone knows that. But so how good are you? And I think it was just such a great question to ask when so many people want to move on to the next thing. What's the shiny new technique or shiny new thing they can do to their boat or a new sail or whatever? And you would come back and go, well, that's great, but how are we with these basics? I always love that 80%.
Yeah, look, acquiring the basics is always a lot of hard work. And so, especially in our sport that's got a lot of technology, people, the human spirit always goes to the technology because it's a bit interesting and it's sort of the easy road. And in our sport, a lot of people don't like to go out there and do the 1,000 tacks or the 1,000 jibes. And if you put that in a football perspective, it's tackling, kicking, and passing.
Right.
And, I watch other sports a lot, especially here in Victoria. We've got AFL football. And when you look at the professional sports, ball sports train, most of their training that you see on the television is perfecting their basic skills. And so that always, I always check in with that. And, I think in the sport of sailing, a lot of people don't just get out there and do the hard yards and perfect those basics.
I think that's true. And I think it's hard. I remember one session I did with you and a bunch of laser sails at Sorrento at one time, Adrian. I thought that one of the things you blew me away with, but I didn't realise until afterwards, which I think is the secret of how good you are, is I remember spending maybe 3 hours in the water and a group of us, and we went 3 hours. And I came in after 3 hours and we went upwind. We did all these different things, right? And then my wife said to me, "So God, you're out there a long time with Adrian. What did you guys do?" And I thought about it and I said, you know what? I think we tacked and jibed. And she goes, "That's it?" So I said, "Actually, honestly, that's it." But it was so much fun. It was absolutely, your mind was racing at 100 miles an hour. And what I was interested is we literally, that's what we did. But the way you did it, I think you're with a couple of coaches at the time as well. In different boats, but the way we did it, you changed the routines up. We started different ways. We stood on the back of our boats and jibed the boats. We sailed with, letting the tiller go. We did a whole lot of things, but essentially what you were doing was getting us really good, or at least trying to, in my case, really good at tacking and jibing. But I love the way you took that and just mixed it up, so it didn't feel like it was like, tacking and jibing for 3 hours. How do you do that? How do you plan that out?
Yeah, well, Rob, I think, my career has been a long time in the youth area. And so for me to engage young minds, you had to make it fun. You had to keep those drills rotating over at a regular sort of time interval. And I generally won't spend more than 8 minutes or 10 minutes on a given drill. And then, bang, it's into the next one. And I love
that, Adrian. That's sorry, somebody get that again, because I think that's really good, because we do have some people who are coaching millennials and Gen Zs in their business life here. So I think that was great. So you got no more than 8 or 10 minutes on the one thing, and then you move on to the next. But you might come back and reinforce that later on, but you're just keeping it going.
yeah, just keeping it going, keeping it fun, and that just keeps the mind engaged. I think if you're just at the coalface and you're delivering one sort of boring drill time and time again, the athlete switches off. So you need to find ways on how to keep that athlete or that employee engaged in what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. We talk about Olympics now because you moved in from being a great state national coach, and you moved into being an Olympic coach, which must be a huge honour when you do that. What was the step up like going from coaching at, say, national, even world championship level to coaching at Olympic level? What was the big shift for you in that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think the big thing is all the gear you get to wear. You get jackets and hats, and you've got logos that you've got the uniform, and you've got all this gear that reminds you every day of the week that you're part of an Australian sailing team, you're part of this Olympic journey, and that's pretty cool. When you walk into your local coffee shop and you've got a jacket on that says 2008 Olympic team, a lot of people ask you questions. So that's one of the neat things about the Olympic journey. But coaching, delivery of the coaching model, it doesn't change when you're inside those four walls of an Olympic Games. And I think the great coaches, you see, they don't change their delivery model or the way they act or the way they get around. I'll say the less experienced coaches, you see all of a sudden they think they're at this big thing called the Olympic Games, and all of a sudden they change their mode of operation. And often I think that leads to some challenges and some failure. So I had the ability to be mentored by Victor and by our great coach, Mike Fletcher. And, one of the things that they always said is that going to an Olympic Games, it's no different. We're just like that. We're at our home club. We've still got to deliver the performance, and we've still got to get out there and tack and jibe like we have been training at home. But
do the athletes themselves is there the athletes change themselves, Adrian, when they realise they've now made it to the Olympics, and then they go to the Olympics and they sense an extra bit of pressure? It's something you have to deal with as a coach?
Yeah, look, I think all that pressure comes from all the external add-ons. All of a sudden you have a team and one coach, and then you turn up to the Olympics and you have a psychologist, a masseuse, a weather person, you've got a doctor, you've got team meetings, you've got all this extra add-on. And I think that's where the pressure comes from. And, generally that athlete spent their career traveling the world with their teammate, delivering their performances just in a very small team. And then you've got all the other countries and all the other athletes from the other countries. It does just add this external pressure there. And I think the great teams and the great coaches are able to just keep the day very normal. Right. And it's just business as always. Nothing much has changed, and we're just here to put in a great performance.
And you've been to two Olympics, Beijing and London, and you also got medals, which is, I think, fantastic. So you had silver medal in Beijing, and then the fantastic gold you got in London. What was the difference between those two Olympics? Because you were also coaching Paralympics, so maybe I'll start there. Is there any difference when you're working with the Paralympians as well? Because I find Paralympians outstanding. I have so much admiration. Is there a difference between your approach with the Paralympians versus the able-bodied athletes?
Yeah, look, I think the approach isn't different, but the amount of energy you need to put in at the para level, I think, is way more. You have athletes who they're quadriplegics, they're paraplegics, so they themselves can't rig the boat or prepare the equipment. So you as a coach, you're basically running the program. You're doing your own Olympic campaign sort of thing, as well as coaching. So it's a very hands-on approach when you deal with para-athletes. And there's challenges there as well. A lot of para-athletes require nurse care. And we would often sort of say, is this a 2-nurse day or is it a 1-nurse day? And some of our para-athletes require 24/7 nurse assistance. And so it's a very, you're very invested emotionally with a para program. There's a lot more to it than just a normal Olympic program. A lot of heart and soul goes into helping para athletes.
I imagine, I can only imagine that you would know this, is that the getting a medal and seeing a para athlete win a medal must be incredibly rewarding.
Oh my God! Probably the proudest moment I've had in my sailing history was China. I had the honour to push up the ramp. My athlete Dan Fitzgibbon and Rachel Cox. I was pushing Dan's wheelchair up onto the medal platform in China, and wow, that was pretty special as a coach to stand there behind the podium and see your athlete receive a medal. And that Olympics in China, it had a special story that not many people know about, but our gold medal winner, Nick Scandone and Maureen from the USA, Nick was diagnosed with, I think it's called ASL. It's a degenerative disease which attacks the muscles. And Nick received his gold medal, and he was very aware that he basically had a very limited number of days to be with us. And Nick passed away about 4 weeks after receiving that gold medal. And for everyone in the crowd and Nick himself, he knew that he basically had about a month to live. Wow. And to see a human receive the highest honour in their sport, and he knew that he had a very limited time with us, it was very emotional. And what a special moment that was for the people there to see that happening.
Wow, incredible.
Nick, if you ever want an incredible book to read, Nick's wife wrote a book called In the Nick of Time, and it's about Nick's journey winning a gold medal and his challenges and then passing away. So yeah, it's a great read. And you know, seeing Nick get his gold medal, it actually pushed our team on to London. At one stage there, we were about to give up, and we thought, no, we've got to keep going with this journey. We've seen how Nick's been challenged and stood up there and got his gold medal, and probably that in itself kept our team ticking away.
It'd be hard not to, Adrian. It's an amazing story. I wasn't. You reminded me of that story. I remember it from back then, but it's been so long, and the story of Nick was just outstanding. I do recall it back then, but I'd forgotten, how close he was to sort of not making it, but getting that gold medal and, being his kind of last hurrah in a way. But it must have been so motivating for you guys to continue on the journey. And obviously, getting it in London, getting the gold, that Nick had in Beijing, but 4 years later, your team and you were the coach, taking gold in London must have also been a very special moment.
Yeah, really special. I think when Dan and Liesl, Dan Fitzgibbon and Liesl Tesh got the gold medal in London, I think there was a piece of Nick there, in that medal ceremony for sure.
Yeah, it'd be very, very hard not to. One of the things that you always did was a lot of journaling. I always found that you had lots of records, lots of journaling, and you wanted the athletes to sort of keep really good notes, even things like their sleep patterns as well. And you mapped that against results. I remember you showing me a spreadsheet once of one of the athletes, and his results were kind of starting to get a bit wobbly, and you kind of mapped it back to their sleep patterns were also being disturbed. And and while they were starting to think about, well, maybe the boat's not so good, and maybe I've lost a bit of edge, and then you mapped it back to this really critical sleep area, and went, hang on, what if we shift this up a bit? And it was such an easy thing to do, but we kind of look somewhere else. Tell us why about your journaling and the data you look at and why you do that.
Yeah, well, Rob, taking notes started for me very early on, and I went to a thing called the Youth World Championship, and that was in Greece in 1986, and I met this incredible laser sailor called Kevin Hall. And Kevin, at a very young age, took extremely detailed tactical notes and drew little diagrams every day. And he showed me his journal one day, and that started me on the road to making sure I took very detailed notes. And as a coach, when I was head of the Queensland Academy of Sport sailing program, I had all the athletes, we'd monitor their sleep, we'd monitor their hours on the water, and quite often when you'd see an athlete start to waver in training or waver in performance, you could look back and say, wow, you're not getting to bed basically on time. And I think as humans, we underestimate rest, and we need to rest the human body, the human mind, and just make sure you're getting 8 hours of sleep a day. These days, I'm not practicing that during this time. I'm probably staying up a little bit late, but often when you're a little run down and you're feeling a bit sick, it's amazing how sleep can help you. And I think just having those detailed notes and the information about the athlete just gives you some backup data when things are going wrong.
Yeah, I think that's the bit, isn't it? When something starts to go wrong, and I think that's the same, in business as well. When everything's going well, people get a bit fat, dumb, and happy and lazy. When they start going a little bit AWOL or crazy, you can start to at least look back at patterns. And I love looking back at patterns in data and behaviour and see, well, what's changed. What can we look at that's showing some evidence? And as I said, I like to work on the fact that, if we've got data, let's look at data. If we've got opinions, let's just go with mine, which is can always be dangerous.
Yeah. And I think when you have the data, like top athletes these days in programs and top businesses, they have the ability to capture a lot of data, but you've got to be able to ask the why again. So, okay, like you're not getting to bed, and a lot of coaches may come in and just give the athlete a blast, but they never delve into why the athlete may not be sleeping well, or the athlete might have had a relative pass away, or they may not have been able to get their favorite food for the day. So the data's great to have, but you need to delve into the why within that data.
It's a fantastic observation, Adrian. It reminds me of the great Lou Richards, from the great Collingwood playing coach. Yeah. And Lou tells a great story that was one of his star players was just grumpy or irritable and getting reported, and so Lou sort of tried to dress him down and sort of try and work it out, and he worked out it was sleep. And he actually, right back in these days, I think it was during the 60s or 70s, he worked out it was a sleep problem. But what Lou did was just not go, well, get more sleep. He actually said, well, can I go around to your house? Anyway, so he went round to his house and a chat, and he said, you mind if I have a look at your bedroom if you don't mind? And the guy goes, oh, yeah, come in here. The bloke was about 6'9", sleeping in a 5'5" bed, right? Yeah. And Lou said, I got the problem, right? And he said, mate, you've had this since your childhood, right? So they went out and they bought a new bed, and they had to extend it because no one had beds that were big enough for him, and they extended his bed, and all of a sudden he was getting his 8 hours. It wasn't that he wasn't going to bed early, and it wasn't that he didn't know he had to get it, but he was this ridiculous bed that was way too short for him, and everyone was just hassling him. And so I love that point about, okay, that's the problem. We could just, I can tell you how to resolve it, but what's actually the background behind it, which could be, someone's got a crook mum, they've had someone gets sick in their life, they've lost a job. It could be a whole bunch of things. That's the symptom, but what's the cause behind it? And if we don't solve the cause, we don't change the behaviour.
Yeah, and I think, Rob, in business these days, I think there's not enough of that, if you call it that soft touch approach. I think we're all so busy and we all want to make a dollar, and we're all super wound up, and there's not enough people asking the why and how are you today. And I think this whole coronavirus pandemic that we're all being confronted with has reset us as humans to say, hey, are you okay? How you going, Rob? And I think that's really important as a human, just to see how your fellow workmates, your teammates, just check in and see how they're going.
I think that's so important, Adrian. I really do hope that's one of the big things that comes out of COVID is that we do that. And as you know, I cycle a lot these days, and I cycle with a group called the Knights of Suburbia. It's one of my groups, and their whole thing, apart from being incredibly fast racers and athletes, they're also just great community minded. I was riding down to Frankston the other day. I was on my own just doing a ride down to Frankston. And I noticed one of the Knights out of the corner of my eye that was we wear his pretty fluoro gear, and I saw him going to wave. And about 5 minutes later, just before Oliver's Hill, Alex rides up beside me. And I know he was going back to Chelsea, but he rode up beside me, and he said, "How you going, mate?" He said, "You going all right?" And I was like, wow. And Alex, we know each other quite well, and he's a really lovely man. But he's a young family. I know he was on the hunt to get back to the kids, but I just love the way he just turned left instead of right, came down, saw my mate, just wanted to check in, a bit of a chat for a while, and chatted and connected, and then he disappeared back up to Melbourne. But I just think it's that approach. We need more of those sort of actions like Alex did. He used to not only wave, but just actually check in and how are you going, and have a bit of a chat about it, and see everything's okay, because we're all, as you said, going through different scenarios through this whole thing. And I do hope we have that second level of kindness and empathy, I think was what you were getting at beforehand in terms of with each other.
Yeah.
Where are you? What's coaching for you at the moment? So let's talk about COVID, because you're riding at the moment. Is sailing back on yet? Or are you allowed to sail now?
Yeah, look, in Melbourne, we're allowed to sail, just boats with one person. So that's been great for me. I'm teaching some of our very young sailors on the water, 8, 9, 10-year-olds in their little Optimus dinghy. And then we have some younger 15-year-old age bracket in their laser dinghies. So I'm out there 3 days a week, back on the water, which is nice. So the bigger boats aren't able to get out in any racing sort of environment at the moment. So when they open up restrictions, if they do, they'll be able to get out there soon. So,
Adrian, the Olympics has been moved out probably for the first time ever, in my knowledge anyway. What does that do to an athlete or a coach in terms of now looking at different dates and a new date, I guess, for the Olympics?
Yeah, Rob, I think really interesting. I think as we all are in such uncharted territory, most athletes, most businesses, we have these timelines that we have a definite date to achieve our performance. And all of a sudden, with COVID, that date's been moved out. We're not even sure whether they're going to be able to deliver the Olympics even in 1 year's time. There's some media reports out there saying that it may not be on. So how do you keep the athlete motivated? Some of these people have been working 8, 12, 16 years to chase their dream. I just think we're in a really, really tough situation. And I think maybe if I was coaching these days, I'd just be trying to say, okay, right, the goalposts have changed slightly. Let's keep our training regime normal, keep turning up to the track and keep perfecting our basics, and just that time frames move. But I wouldn't want to be in their shoes at the moment. I think it's going to be quite a lot of athletes who are pretty down, and some of the athletes 1 year on in their age may make a massive difference to their ability to perform at the Olympic level. So, there could be some real challenges moving forward with this. Some athletes at the moment in some parts of the world, they're not able to train at the moment. So we're seeing all this ingenious ways of training at home and in the house. So,
yeah. And they can't travel as well. So you can't train, you can't travel.
Yeah, you can't train. But maybe on a positive, out of this comes all this incredible, innovative ideas on. Okay, well, I can't get to the pool today, so how do I train? And I think there'll be a lot of positive come out of it as well, as we're seeing in business.
Yeah, and I think that will be positive for some athletes who also maybe just made the cut, but are actually going to now be able to use this time to really get to a world level. So I think it's going to be interesting. There's always swings and roundabouts, as you and I know.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be really interesting to watch, and I just hope they get a date, because it's always nice to have a date to be aiming for, isn't it? Rather than just endlessly training. You don't really know where the next step is, or where the goalposts just keep on moving on you. So
yeah.
Mate, Adrian, that's been fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's been outstanding. Just so much information through here. So I'm really looking forward to be able to get the podcast up and out to all our listeners. So thanks once again.
No problem, Rob. And as you know, I'm a creature who's geared to help people, and I love sharing my experiences and my knowledge of coaching around the globe for 20 plus years, and it's been a great journey, and I owe a lot of thanks to a lot of people, and one way of me giving back is to get on your podcast and share my experience.
Really appreciate it, mate. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rob. Bye.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.